and welcome to the Relevance of Now with William Linville. My name is Michael Connell. Hey, Will.
Hey, Michael, how you doing, buddy?
Wonderful. How are you?
Awesome, as always.
Excellent. Today we're going to talk about a great topic of where do our thoughts come from? And we were just talking about where do our thoughts come from, and you shared that they come from more or less four different categories. They come from our past lives and incarnational journeys. Our thoughts come from outside of us and mass consciousness that we pick up on. Additionally, our thoughts come from our journey now through this lifetime and our beliefs and judgments that we pick up on and create. And the fourth area that our thoughts come from is our true self.
Yes.
And when it comes to our thoughts coming from our incarnational journeys, can you share a little bit more about that?
Most definitely, Michael. We have the soul being all of your incarnational journeys in one fabrication called the soul level of consciousness. So in reality, there's still part of you experiencing this, experiencing that, whether it be being burned at the stake, whether it's living in a religious convent or anything like that. And you have the other ones coming from living on the farmland, on, and all these decisions and experiences within and through the soul level that you've, from the karmic lattice work, that you've taken in, that you've taken on, that you've experienced, and that you've gone to the left, you've gone to the right, and for whatever reason, eventually you left the planet. You had all of these experiences. Maybe it's you were eaten by a bear. Maybe it was intruders coming into your home when you were in your sleep hours. Maybe it was, dear ones recruiting you or your partner to war, where you felt a sense of powerlessness. Maybe it was from where you were too different. Now, I say too different, not in reality, but too different for those times and spaces, and others persecuted you for it. It could be through your incarnation realms. You were hiding in a swamp, built a cottage, on and on, because you didn't blend in nor fit in with society at that time.
And so that might be why you just notice you hate swamps in this lifetime.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. So you start to have either a love, a hate, or a fear for swamps. Maybe you have an aversion to organized religion. Maybe you have an aversion to working a 9-to-5 job. Maybe you have an aversion to being out in the fields plowing for your own sustenance. Maybe you have an aversion to a partner or children, whatever it may be.
And this isn't necessarily good or bad. It's just
experience.
An experience. And if it is fearful, it's an opportunity for you to move beyond it in this lifetime.
Just remember from the soul level, Michael, that you've actually stored those fears. So you were walking on the cliff and a group surrounded you and pushed you over the edge. Okay, now we go into the fear of heights, but we also go into the fear of trusting others.
There's so much to it.
Oh, and it goes on and on and on, Michael.
Well, and I've always found that this wisdom that you're sharing when you've shared it with me, really just fascinating. And that's why we chose this topic about thought, is that our thoughts just come from so many places, as we're going to get to. And we make it just so part of us.
Exactly. And it's just to give an example. There was the old Will, the one that had the body before I did. He was married and they had their own, what I would call their own karmic journey. It was interesting. She came into his live stream when the old Will was living at a boarding care down in downtown San Diego, California. And she presented, oddly enough, from a mental institution, and they hit it off right away. Now, was it physical attraction? No. Was it because she wanted or he wanted what the other could give them? No. it was like a timestamp through the karmic lattice work where she came into his life stream, but this time as his rescuer.
Mm.
So he went with her and they would go to Jack in the Box, do all this other stuff, the stuff that brought him a certain amount of comfort. And then they ended up getting married, on and on, knocking out a couple little ones. And from here, it was interesting because when I fully moved, well, one of the processes after the old Will left the planet, because he made all of his goodbyes, even to her and everyone else at that time, where he knew he wasn't coming back. So he went into the gastric bypass surgery at Mercy Hospital in San Diego, and then I came out. Now, I had the pleasure, and I want to make sure I'm clear here. I had the pleasure and the honor via agreement to clear out all of his karmic issues, all of his karmic agreements, vows, contracts, and so forth. And it was interesting because it's not like you push another away on and on and on. But then there was a period of like 2, 3 weeks being in bed, just the body, not me, but the body was totally sobbing. And from every guilt to every remorse, even their incarnational journey, and to me, it's literal more than anything. It was so bizarre. She was in their igloo up in Alaska way back when, and she was trying to keep fire going, but they were starving. So he went out on some sort of contraption, went out to find food, and he died. He was overtaken by a bear and never made it back. Now, due to their agreement, so after a few days, she took off to look for him who was looking for food, and she left the planet.
Hmm.
Now, you look at all this stuff karmically, emotionally, from the soul level. He had all this guilt, all this remorse, all this frustration, suppressed anger, where, like, for him, it was like the universe, God, whatever's against him, and, playing the odds. But for her, she felt abandoned. She felt thrown to the side. She felt afraid. She felt scared. And she also felt all this betrayal that he never came back. So you get into all of this through a soul level incarnational journey. And at that time, for himself, that equaled, quote, relationship. And it was funny because they go back and forth on and on, not so much arguing as much as, I guess I would say, who was going to be the bigger victim.
Right.
So in that way, that was happening subtly from the soul level, but then we go from the soul level through the subpsyche, on and on. And this time around, it was his job to save her.
Ah.
But she took on the same responsibility. It was her job to save him.
Yeah, it's really fascinating, and we're going to get to the fact that you were talking about it's your honor. It was
Yeah.
your honor to deal with this when we come to our true self.
Yeah.
But that's another fascinating aspect of this in moving beyond the thought forms, beliefs, and judgments, no matter where they came from in this
Mhm.
lifetime, so that we can experience more of our true self.
Absolutely, buddy.
So the next area that our thoughts come from are this lifetime. And many of us have heard that most of your sort of like wired core judgments and beliefs are developed maybe by your fourth or sixth birthday. Can you share more about where thoughts come from in this incarnational journey?
Most definitely. So let's all just take a breath in through your nose for the count of 12, all the way down to your lower abdomen below your navel. Hold for the count of 12. And then a nice exhaling, nice and slow as you can through the mouth for another count of 12. And on the exhale, let's go all the way back to age 4, age 3, age 2, age 1, all the way into the womb in the third trimester of the womb. Let's just all be there right here, right now, for a moment. It's interesting, right? You're in a womb that's hypothetically safe, comfortable, warm, or cold. I mean, everyone's journey is different, but where you're literally watching and experiencing. I want to be very clear. You're experiencing at that time, okay, am I wanted? Am I the correct gender? Am I being welcomed in with open arms? And then let's go into everything that your mother is experiencing, even your father's experiencing at that time, where you start making all these core belief systems. I'm lovable, or maybe I'm not lovable. I'm wantable, maybe I'm not wantable. I'm a male, not a female, and they want a female. So we create that belief that something is wrong with you. Okay, now this goes all the way back to why children prefer one parent over the other. So the dad wanted you, the mom didn't, or vice versa. Maybe they both wanted you, but they wanted you so you can be the glue intact that keeps their relationship together. And that's a lot of pressure. That's a lot of dutifulness. That's a lot of responsibility, which goes all the way to the saying, well, we do what we do, and we do it because we're family. Now, that's, it's pretty much a 6 letter, 4 letter word, an F word, because from there, they both start with F. One has more letters than the other one. But where you start feeling this burden, dutifulness, responsibility, and under the guise of emotion, because many say, well, I love my family and blah, blah, blah. Now, I challenge you on this one. I'm not saying it's true. I'm not saying it's not true. I'm saying for you to discern within yourself, is that true love, unconditional love, or is it a whole nother characterization of the ego emotions? Because you're supposed to, and I remember this way back when families have to stick together and it's us against the world, blah, blah, blah. Well, that's a pretty arrogant term, but it's also pretty misleading because whether you like them, don't like them, whether you love them, don't love them, whether you agree, disagree, blah, 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 you're kind of stuck in a state of just accepting what they do, when they do, how they do. And right now, we're coming from a state of waking up and opening up beyond their action, words, and deeds and behaviors, beyond all the carnality part of an undercurrent space, because the perceptional belief, and also I would even call it the perceptual need, is from the ego level needing somewhere to belong. Whether you're abused, which abuse is such an overrated term. Someone gives you a dirty look and you're being abused. It's like, seriously? But from the family monad, okay, whether you've been beaten down, whether you've been constantly disciplined or punished, whether you've been broken down, broken down, broken down to be what they think you should be in a body on a planet in their eyes, not yours. That's where we start to run into a lot of brick walls. And of course, how beautiful it is, a lot of wake up calls. When I say I was honored to take on all the old will debris, I mean it with all my heart. I would go through all that pain again. I would go through all of his anger, rage again. And the guilt that he felt more than anger and rage, but the guilt led to anger and rage. I would live it all over again because it was more about the exploration of what he was perceiving rather than what was the truth.
Right. We have then what I hear you saying is, let's say it's different for everyone, but starting in the third trimester up to 4 or 6, we are identifying our reality.
Yeah,
in life.
based from your experiences, based on what you're seeing from your mom and dad.
And then you have the underlay of your soul level as well. Talk about confusing.
Yeah, in vows, contracts, agreements, and total dyslexia land.
Right. It makes, sense that we come in quite confused and identifying all of this with ourselves that we then live out for a period of time. And if we're get the honor, or if we're lucky enough, we get the opportunity to move beyond them.
We'll wake up from it.
Which leads us to the other area that when we're totally identified with all of these soul agreements and all these beliefs and judgments we have, when we're in, let's say, a group or even just your spouse or your kid or just mass consciousness as a whole, can you talk about how mass consciousness thoughts outside of us, how we pick up on them?
Yeah. It's interesting, Michael, because a lot of times it goes into when you're feeling yourself in a confined state, whether it be a party, whether it be a 9 to 5, whether it be a marriage that looks good on paper, but not fulfilling in the physical. You're going through all of the different, or even being single. And if you don't want to be single, what do I have to do to not be single? And all of these internalized negotiations with yourself. Because if we can all take it to heart for a minute, you as a being are completely, unanimously expansive. Doesn't matter if you're in a airport, a plane, a train, automobile, you expand beyond all the metal, you expand beyond all the walls, you expand beyond all of the above. And that's what I call as your natural state of normal. Now, when we get into the internalized negotiation, okay, now I look down and oh my goodness, I have a female structure or a male structure where now this whole boatload of rules come down that if I have a female structure or a male structure, I have to believe this way, do this, do that, do that, do that, do that, to fit in, but still with the same, still very much with the same yearning. The yearning is the yearning for love and acceptance. The reason I'm walking you through this from parties, airports, trains, planes, automobiles, and submarines, and everything else, you're in a confined state where you're sizing up the whole area to ensure that you're safe.
Right.
Then that's like level number one. Then level number two is okay, I gotta fit in, I gotta blend in, I gotta mimic, I gotta blah 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 blah. And I want you to feel me. You're pulling in, you're pulling in, you're pulling in. You can go to a party. It doesn't matter if it's indoors, outdoors, or on a cruise ship, where you start mimicking and trying to more subliminal normally than conscious, but you start trying to mimic, where you start at that point pulling in, losing yourself at that point. To where now you're welcoming in the mass collective thought forms and you start becoming identified with them.
That just reminds me of how easily the people that are dominant manipulate so many of us humans. Think the way they think, or I don't have my own thoughts, so I just have to trust them.
Not even trust. It's just like going into automatic pilot.
Just to be part of something.
Did you ever ask yourself, Michael, if we were Canadian, if we were Africans, if we were Australians, the ones from the UK, on, what for yourself? Because you take on those attributes. So now it comes in to change, for some odd reason, your behavioral mannerisms.
Right.
It doesn't matter if I'm in Hawaii, I'm still Will. I'm in Texas, I'm still Will. But it's one of those things, right? It's a primal survival mechanism, kind of like a chameleon, to change faces, change shape, change form, to blend into the realms of others.
And the reason we chose this topic is to move on to the next area our thoughts come from, which is our true self. This is the waking up process you referred to. This is the honor to basically see all the areas in our life that are conflicted, painful, fearful, any of the various emotions that pull us down,
Yeah.
or
In identities.
identities, manipulations that we realize, why am I thinking this?
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
Like,
Right.
what doesn't make any sense?
Yeah.
All these types of things. So when it comes to thoughts that are coming from our true self, now, so myself as an example, I can imagine much of my life that very few thoughts came from my true self, or I just didn't have access to feeling. And my thoughts were so dominated by the first three areas that my true thoughts didn't have a space.
Exactly.
Is that what
They depleted and depleted. So if you can imagine, it's like you being the paper towel, whatever it may be, and I'm twisting it to wring it out, or a rag, twisting it tighter and tighter and tighter to where eventually you're so identified with that structure that you're literally squeezing out your true essence.
right?
And now we go into the primality of the body, even beyond sex, power, greed. It goes into survive, 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 whether it be monetarily, whether it be emotionally, whether it be in a partnership, whether it be XYZ. It's like it's getting tighter and tighter and tighter with the more of you that's going missing in action. And you're becoming more identified with the primal survival attributes rather than yourself.
And when I reflect back on that, even the sort of the starting of an opening of knowing, feeling some of those thoughts, I remember even if I was starting to feel them, I didn't have the clarity about them, which is why we're doing this podcast, is to assist us as humans to see what's really going on
Mm-hmm.
and who you really are, marrying the higher and lower, and assisting us to move beyond all these beliefs, judgments, and patterns that were wired in us.
And the reason you weren't seeing is because you were so, like you mentioned, wired into you. You were so vibratorily bogged down in the density and survival. But now, step by step, you take a breath, nice deep exhale. And so, why don't we all right now, Michael? Let's all welcome in our higher levels. Higher being the rest of you that is vibrating at a higher frequency in megahertz of light. But right now, let's welcome in a higher level from your higher levels. Let's all form. And you always know it's your higher levels because it's subtle, because it's very loving, very supportive, very embracing. Many perceive what Archangel Michael is telling me to do, blah, blah, blah. So I want you to take a breath with me. I want you to check that off as the ego. Archangel Michael will not tell you to do anything. The ego does. So right now, let's skip all that. Let's welcome in a thought of your own, which is very loving, supportive, nurturing, kind, understanding. So, Michael, what's the first thought that arises for you?
What I find is when you're saying that, I just feel like the cells in my body,
Mm-hmm.
and then they're vibrating higher. And I don't really have a lot of thoughts other than what was happening was I was just smiling.
Yeah. Which is where you're feeling you now. But you've noticed how your thoughts, the feeling of yourself, it has zero polarity, zero duality, and zero friction.
Right.
And like just for that moment, I mean, you experience your body as you coming into the body, you experienced it vibrating faster and faster, becoming lighter and lighter, more and more alive for that matter.
Yes. Well, and in listening to you through this whole time, it's like my body knows that it just vibrates just because it knows it's hearing, I guess the truth is the right word.
Yeah. And that camaraderie, that communion, it's like a bolt of lightning, but coming all the way through your whole being from the inside out and from the outside in to collapse all these small identities of Michael.
And one of the things that I've loved about my waking up is that at first I learned that you should be grateful. And then over time, it's a feeling.
Which is so important.
Right. And then like that that gratefulness is truly a natural state. That's
Totally.
what's whether I was taught that or not, that was the process, is that as soon as you're more able to clear out the beliefs and judgments, see the incarnational journeys for what they were, and
Uh-huh.
commanding that I'm no longer going to be controlled.
Exactly. So to be grateful, which I don't talk about a whole lot, but the reality of it is when you stop, you become right here, right now, in the relevance of the now. You take a breath, you start to acknowledge everything around you. Like for myself, I am grateful for you, Michael. I'm grateful for my bride. I'm grateful for Jen. I'm grateful for this home. I'm grateful for all the pictures on the wall, the carpet, and the comfort. So, right here, right now, it could be a lot of different things, but it really comes to your heart opening up, your eyes opening up to really see what it's not about belongings, but about what truly is taking place within yourself and around yourself,
Yeah.
where we step out of the mind, come right into the relevance of the now to where, it's kind of bizarre, but I totally forgot that we had kitty cats. I totally forgot about the yard, or not about what to do, but about stopping, taking a breath, and fully enjoying it.
One of the things that you've shared recently just has been like a mental teaser, or like, is you're like, why would I remember yesterday?
Yeah.
Like, what purpose does it have?
As far as I'm concerned, it's like eternity ago.
And that the reason why you don't need to remember yesterday with your mind, or it's because you can tune into it in the
Yeah.
moment, right?
Because it's
You're
an
in the
outside
moment.
dimensional plane where everything is accessible.
And so when we're talking about which thoughts come from our true self, is it necessary for us to be in the now, in the relevance of now, to have the true thoughts?
Yes and no. You could be busy doing whatever you're doing when you're doing it, Michael. But I would also say, even during that, there's still that, it's like way back here behind you, that subtle, loving thought, embracement, acknowledgement, and from the angelic, archangelics, and host realms, their gratitude for you, their admirement for you, they take their hat off and give you a standing ovation for even picking up a body in the first place.
Right.
Now, ideally, I would say, yeah, time's not real, space is not real. All these perceptions, scenarios, and unfoldments are not real. But right here, right now is kind of cool because you come to right here, right now. I guess I'd say, taking that short journey from the head to the heart, where now you're able to fully open up your arms and embrace you and the presence of yourself. Where from right here, right now, you're not preoccupied, you're not whatever. You're totally wide awake, fully alert. And I play with it, I have fun with it. So, where I can get more accomplished in one day being right here, right now, than listening to the headspace. Just, okay, it's 3 o'clock, it's 4 o'clock, it's 5 o'clock. Because once we supersede or arise from that, supersede it, and basically take our power back, our power, our energy, our soul fragmentations. Now you're truly wide awake, fully alert, right here, right now. It's where you can get 20 times as much stuff done rather than being in the headspace,
Right.
playing with the chronological order.
In summary, you've shared so much about where our thoughts come from, and how best can you conclude this podcast about our thoughts?
To remember yourself. At this point, I would say let's forget about anything and everything you've ever experienced in a body on a planet. Let's forget about for a moment, or at least put aside for a moment, everything you've ever perceived to be true in a body on a planet, and beginning to start welcoming in yourself and welcoming in the truth of all that is, not a mental, not an emotional, not a subpsyche. Because you got to remember, the conscious mind is constantly acting on trying to prove all of the perceptual judgments, all the perceptual subconscious. The conscious mind is constantly trying to prove it to be real, true. Because remember, from the cognitive mind, even from the subpsyche, the ego doesn't want to be wrong. So it's constantly trying to support. If I decide, okay, Michael, I'm nothing but a piece of garbage. Well, my conscious mind is going to keep repeating to try to prove to me I'm no more than a piece of garbage. And that becomes very integrated. But then, of course, you're not a piece of garbage. But at the same time, you go through the subconscious, like we're doing right now, by being present. Because when you're being present right here, right now, in the relevance of now, okay, we can listen to the conscious mind and just bring our consciousness. Let's make it the heart. Let's make it your big toe on both feet. But right here, right now, you're becoming aware of it. So therefore, it takes all the conscious thought forms, lets them fade away. But now you're crossing through that portal into listening even to your subconscious. And it's interesting because there's still conversations going on and on within the subpsyche, but where we start to really take a breath, take a break, and letting all the subpsyche, emotional calorie status work, on and on, come up. And because remember, it's all wanting to dissolve. So you can more and more come through. So it's not a battle. Let's not create another battle with the ego. Let's just really be clear with ourself, within and through the body, within and through the heart, within and through the throat, the third eye, solar plexus, critical vortex, root chakra, crown chakra, whatever. Let's really become right here, right now. That's where it has no power.
Thank you, William. And thank you all for joining us. This is The Relevance of Now with William Linville.
Love you, Mike.
Love you, Will. Until next time, namaste.